Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about healing and repair. I'm Dr. Saida Khadija Fatima, Assistant Professor, and I'll be talking about the pathology of healing. Healing is the body's response to injury in an attempt to restore normal structure and function. It involves two distinct processes, regeneration and repair. Regeneration is when healing takes place by proliferation of parenchymal cells. Parenchymal cells are the tissue cells, and usually it results in complete restoration of original tissue. Whereas repair, it takes place by proliferation of connective tissue elements only, resulting in fibrosis and scarring. At times, both the processes takes place simultaneously. Some parenchymal cells are short-lived, while others have a longer lifespan. In order to maintain proper structure of tissues, these cells are under constant regulatory control of their cell cycle and growth factors. Cell cycle is defined as period between two successive cell division. It has 5 phases. M phase represents the phase of mitosis. G1 is gap 1 phase, where the daughter cell enters the G1 phase after mitosis. S phase is during this phase the synthesis of nuclear DNA takes place. Gap 2 phase is after completion of nuclear DNA duplication, the cell enters the G2 phase. G0 phase is the quiescent or the resting phase of the cell after an M phase. Not all cells of the body divide at the same pace. Some mature cells do not divide at all, while others complete a cell cycle every 16 to 24 hours. Those are the rapidly dividing cells. The main difference between the slow dividing and rapidly dividing cell is the duration of the G1 phase. Depending upon the capacity to divide, the cells of the body can be divided into 3 groups. Labile cells, stable cells, and permanent cells. Labile cells are the cells that continue to multiply throughout the life under normal physiological conditions. They include surface epithelial cells of epidermis, alimentary tract, respiratory tract, urinary tract, vagina, cervix, uterine endometrium, hematopoietic cells of bone marrow, and cells of lymph nodes and spleen. Stable cells. Stable cells are the cells that decrease or lose their ability to proliferate after adolescence, but under certain response to stimuli, they will replicate. Example, parenchymal cells of organs like liver, like suppose if there is liver injury, then liver injury is a stimulus upon which the liver cells can regenerate. Pancreas, kidneys, adrenal and thyroid also are tissues with stable cells. Mesenchymal cells like smooth cells, fibroblast, vascular endothelium, bone and cartilage cells are also stable cells. Permanent cells do not proliferate. They lose their ability to proliferate around the time of birth. They include the nervous system, skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, etc. So the labile cells stay within the cell cycle and continue to enter the M phase and continuously divide throughout their life. Whereas the stable cells enter the resting phase after a division, but on certain stimuli can readily enter the cell cycle again and continue to multiply. Whereas permanent cell, they leave the cell cycle and will die after they serve the purpose. Example, the neurons. Those are permanent cells. Regeneration of any type of parenchymal cells involve following 2 processes. Proliferation of original cells from the margin of injury with migration so as to cover the gap. Okay. So first there will be proliferation of original cells from the margin of injury. So they'll migrate, they'll try to cover the gap or the defect. Then this migrated cells, they will proliferate in the gap with subsequent differentiation and maturation to their tissue of origin so as to reconstitute the tissue. Repair is, as I said, it is the growth of connective tissue. So it is the replacement of the injured tissue by connective tissue like fibroblasts, by the fibroblast, like fibrous tissue. So basically it's a form of fibrosis which will take place. Two processes are involved in repair. First is granulation tissue formation and contraction of wounds. So these two processes, the major role of the fibroblast will be there. So it is repair is response takes place by participation of the mesenchymal cells. What are the mesenchymal cells? The connective tissue stem cells, fibrocytes, histiocytes, endothelial cells, macrophages, platelets, and parenchymal cells also of the injured organ. So how does this repair takes place in the form of granulation tissue? So term granulation tissue derives its name from slightly granular and pink appearance of the tissue. So suppose if you remove the scab from the healed wound, you will see certain red dots. Those are nothing but the small blood vessels which have been exposed. So each granule corresponds histologically to the proliferation of new small blood vessels which are slightly lifted on the surface by thin covering of fibroblast and young collagen. So that gives the name granulation tissue. Three phases of formation of granulation tissue will be there. First will be the phase of inflammation. That is, after any injury there will be blood accumulation or blood clot formation at the site of injury. So this then there will be acute inflammatory response with exudation of plasma. So acute inflammatory response means the neutrophils and some monocytes will be recruited to the site of injury within 24 hours. Phase of clearance is a combination of proteolytic enzyme liberated by the neutrophils and autolytic enzyme from the dead tissue cells which causes phagocytic activity of the macrophage to clear off the necrotic debris, necrotic tissue and red blood cells. After clearance there will be ingrowth of granulation tissue. Two main processes will be there in the ingrowth of granulation tissue: angiogenesis and fibrogenesis. So what is angiogenesis? So this is an important question which can be asked in a UG or a postgraduate paper. So angiogenesis or neovascularization is formation of a new blood vessel at the site of injury and takes place by proliferation of endothelial cells from the margin of severed blood vessels. Initially, endothelial cells are in the form of solid buds. Within few hours, they develop a lumen and start carrying blood. So there will be recanalization. This is not a recanalization which takes place in the thrombus. This is a lumen formation which takes place in the solid bud. The newly formed blood vessels are leaky, so this give rise to leakage of the plasma, giving the tissue an edematous appearance of new granulation tissue. Soon these blood vessels differentiate into muscular arterioles, thin-walled venules and true capillaries. Angiogenesis takes place under the influence of growth factors like vascular endothelial growth factor. So these are released by the mesenchymal cells, and endothelial cells have receptors for this. Platelet derived growth factors, transforming growth factor beta, basic fibroblastic growth factor and surface integrins are also associated with cellular proliferation. Fibrogenesis is newly formed blood vessels are present in a ground substance. Means there will be a matrix for these blood vessels which is made up of fibroblasts. Sorry for the spelling mistake. So some of these fibroblasts have combination of morphological and functional characteristics of a smooth muscle which is called as myofibroblast. Collagen fibrils begins to appear by about 6th day. As the maturation proceeds, more and more collagen is formed while the number of active fibroblasts and new blood vessels decreases. This results in formation of inactive looking scar known as cicatrization. So this is the diagrammatic representation of a keratinized squamous epithelium showing discontinuation, that is ulcer formation. So this ulcer, the eroded epithelium subepithelially shows acute inflammatory cells like the multilobed multisegmented neutrophils, the monocytes or the macrophages, the plasma cells sometimes, and the lymphocytes. And here you can see small round lumens of proliferating blood vessels. So this forms the granulation tissue. Histologically, it looks like this. This is the stratified squamous epithelium, and subepithelially we are seeing the small proliferating capillaries with RBCs inside, and the lumens are visible. And in between, the collagenous stroma shows acute inflammatory infiltrate. The contraction of wound starts, the wound starts contracting after 2 to 3 days, and it is complete by 14th day. So by this time, the wound is reduced to 80% of its original size. Contracted wound results in rapid healing since lesser surface area of the injured tissue has to be replaced. So what are the factors which play a role in contraction? So dehydration is one, where there will be removal of fluid by drying a wound. Then contraction will be another thing, where the contraction of collagen is responsible for shrinkage of the wound. Appearance of myofibroblast. So myofibroblast has characteristic of both smooth muscle and fibroblast. So there is evidences that this fibrils are present in the cytoplasm of these myofibroblasts, which are also seen in smooth muscle, and they contain actin myosin similar to that of found in the non-striated muscle cells. Cytoplasm also has anti-smooth muscle antibodies. So all this suggests the contraction ability of the fibroblast. Nuclei of these myofibroblasts have infolding of nuclear membrane, and these cells also have basement membrane and desmosomes, which are not seen in ordinary fibroblast. And drug response to granulation tissue is similar to that of smooth muscle. So meanwhile, when all this is happening in the repair, that is the granulation tissue formation, the neovascularization, and the contraction of the wound is happening, what is the matrix which is supporting it? It is the extracellular matrix. So there is a background to all these things which is going on. This matrix is mainly composed of certain elements, which will be 5 components basically: collagen, glycoproteins, elastic fibers, proteoglycans, and finally the basement membrane of the epithelium, if epithelium is involved. So the wound is strengthened by proliferation of fibroblast and myofibroblast, which get structural support from extracellular matrix. So what does this matrix do? It can direct cell migration, it can help in attachment of the cells, it can help in differentiation, it can help in organization of the wound. It has 5 components. The first among the components is the collagen. So the collagens are a family of protein which provides structural support to the multicellular organism. It is the main component of tissue such as the fibrous tissue, bone, cartilage, valve, cornea, basement membrane, and it is synthesized and secreted by ribosomes basically. 27 types of collagen is there, but the majority of the type is type 1. Type 1, 3 and 5 are called true fibrillar collagen, and other types are called as non-fibrillar and amorphous material. Adhesive glycoproteins acts as glue to the extracellular matrix, and the cells consist of fibronectin, tennesin and thrombospondin. What is fibronectin? So it is plasma of 2 types again, plasma fibronectin and tissue fibronectin. Plasma fibronectin is synthesized by liver, and tissue fibronectin is synthesized by fibroblast, endothelial cells and mesenchymal cells. So this fibronectin is basically responsible for primitive matrix formation in fetus and also in wound healing. Tennesin or cytotactin is the glycoprotein associated with fibroblast and appears in wound about 48 hours after injury. It disappears from mature scar tissue. Thrombospondin is mainly synthesized by granules of platelets, and it is adhesive protein for keratinocytes and platelets, but is inhibitory to attachment of fibroblasts and endothelial cells. Basement membrane composed of collagen type 4 and laminin. and it will stain positive with periodic acid Schiff. So this will give strength to the epithelium or support to the epithelium. Elastic fibers have the ability to recoil, and they consist of two components, elastin glycoprotein and elastic myofibril. Elastases degrade the elastic tissue, example in inflammation and emphysema. Proteoglycans is of these 5 types: the chondroitin sulfate, heparan sulfate, dermatan sulfate, keratin sulfate and hyaluronic acid. So these are basically carbohydrate polymer. After removal of stitches, so now the extracellular matrix components we finished. So usually in general, the strength of the wound is 10%, which reaches 80% in about 2 weeks. So 10% on the 7th day, 80% on about 2 weeks. All this is because of the extracellular matrix. Turnover of extracellular matrix is actually because of remodeling during fetal life, which slows down in adult tissue. These are degraded by a family of metalloproteinases which act under regulatory control of inhibitors of metalloproteinases. So coming to the wound healing, we'll be talking about the wound healing as well as the fracture healing and organ healing also. So wound healing is basically of 2 types: healing by first intention or primary union, healing by second intention or secondary union. It provides a classical example of a combination of regeneration and repair. It can have 4 phases of wound healing. The first phase takes place between 1 to 3 days, which is called as homeostasis. Homeostasis is hemostasis or homeostasis is nothing but the ability of the body to react to any defect by first bleeding and clotting, and usually it is to stop the bleeding. So clot formation will be there. First bleeding will be there, then that will turn into clot. So that tries to fill the defect. On day 3 to day 20, there will be inflammation along with granulation tissue formation. Phase 3 is proliferation or granulation tissue formation, that is from week 1 to 6, which also is accompanied by repair, which tries to pulse the wound together. Then finally week 6 to 2 years is remodeling or maturation phase, where final proper tissue formation will occur. So healing by first intention is also called as primary union. In primary union, it takes place in wounds which are clean and uninfected, which are surgically incised without much loss of cells and tissue, and edges could be approximated in the sense they can be brought together in perfect union. Initial hemorrhage will take place immediately after injury, and the space between the approximated surface of the incised wound will be filled by blood. This blood will turn into clot and seals the wound after dehydration. So it will prevent against infection. This clot formation will prevent further infection and dehydration of the underlying structures. That will be followed by acute inflammatory response within 1 day, and neutrophils appear from the margins of incision, and by 3rd day it is replaced by macrophages. Now the epithelium tries to grow through basal cells. So basal cells will release the spurs of epithelium, which will come from both the sides and will try to unite in the center of the gap. A well approximated wound is covered by a layer of epithelium within 2 days or 48 hours, and the migrated epidermal cells separate the underlying viable dermis from the overlying necrotic material and clot, forming scab, which is cast off. On 5th day, a multi-layered new epidermis is formed, which is differentiated into superficial and deep layers. 4th step is organization. So after epithelialization, there should be connective tissue formation as well. So by 3rd day, fibroblast also invade the wound. By 5th day, new collagen fibril starts forming. And in fourth week, the scar tissue with scant cellular and vascular elements and a few inflammatory cells and epithelialized surfaces form. Finally, what remains is called as suture tract. It is a separate kind of wound, and each suture tract is a separate kind of wound and inside same phenomena as in healing of primary wound. Thus, the scar formed in a sutured wound is neat due to close opposition of the margins of the wound. When sutures are removed around 7th day, much of epithelialized suture tract is avulsed. However, sometimes the suture tract gets infected, causing stitch abscess. Epithelial cells may persist in the tract, causing implantation or epidermolysis. So already a incised wound will be there. On that incised wound, if sutures are present, those are called as suture tract wounds. So this is how healing by first intention or primary union will take place in a clean, neat, surgically incised wound with regular margins. First, there will be hemorrhage in the defect. That will also be accompanied by migration of the polymorphonuclear leukocytes. Then, suppose if sutures are made to close this wound, so that will create another kind of uh, wound which will also heal by primary intention. Now this epithelialization will take place with the proliferation of the basal cells or formation of epithelial spurs. So there will be epithelialization from the basal, starts from the basal layer and pushes the clot upward in the form of scab and dead tissue. And a similar thing will happen, like the suture tract will also be surrounded by inflammatory cells, and below the suture tract or suture, below the wound, there will be neovascularization or granulation tissue formation along with fibroblast and chronic inflammatory cells. Now by the end of 7 days, you can see the suture tract wounds have healed as well as the primary wound have healed by the formation of collagen. This step is called as organization. Healing by second union is also called as secondary union. This is defined as healing of wound having these characteristics, like open with a large tissue defect, at times infected, having extensive loss of cells and tissue, and the wound is not approximated by surgical sutures, that is left open. The basic events in secondary union is similar to primary but differ in having a larger tissue defect which has to be bridged. Hence, healing takes place from base upwards, that is from the basal cell towards the corneal layer. The healing by second intention is slow and results in a large, at times ugly scar as compared to rapid healing and neat scar of primary union. So same kind of phases will occur: the initial hemorrhage phase, the inflammatory phase, the epithelial changes, and the reepithelialization. So the main difference is in the epithelial change. The epidermal cells from both the margins of the wound proliferate and migrate into the wound in the form of epithelial spurs till they meet in the middle and re-epithelialize the gap completely. However, proliferating epithelial cells do not cover the surface fully until granulation tissue from the base has started filling the space. So the granulation tissue has to fill the gap, and whatever epithelialization is taking place is over this granulation tissue and not before the formation of granulation tissue. In this way, a pre-existing viable connective tissue is separated from the necrotic material and clot on the surface, which is called as scab, which is cast off. The regenerated epidermis becomes stratified and keratinized. So this is how the granulation tissue will be there, which forms the male bulk of secondary healing. Granulation tissue is also formed in primary union, but it is main bulk in secondary union, and it is neovascularization and fibroblast proliferation. The newly formed granulation tissue is deep red, granular, very fragile. With time, the scar on maturation becomes pale and white due to increased collagen and decreased vascularity. Finally, Connective tissue is playing a role in secondary healing. So wound contraction has to be there, which is an important feature of secondary healing, which is not seen in primary healing. This is the difference. So due to action of myofibroblasts present in granulation tissue, the wound contracts to 1/3 to 1/4 and its original size. Wound contraction occurs at a time when active granulation tissue is being formed. So this is the large defect of the secondary of a large defect of a wound, open wound, and this is healing by second intention, where there is a hemorrhage formation trying to fill the gap and neutrophils coming from the margins of the wound. There will be re-epithelialization from the base and trying to separate the scab from the underlying tissue, as well as granulation tissue formation and inflammatory cells present subepithelially. Eventually there will be collagen formation. So the epithelialization, if you see, is not full thickness epithelialization, it is just 2 to 3 cell thickness. So that's the difference between primary union and a secondary union, where epithelialization is not complete, but there is a major role played by the granulation tissue as well as the collagen wound contraction by collagen formation. Finally, what we are left is the scar. So you should remember that both the primary and secondary intention have certain common steps like the hemorrhage, then the acute inflammatory cells, then the epithelialization and granulation tissue formation, but it differs in the form of wound contraction in the secondary intention phase. So clean wounds heal by primary union. Uninfected, clean, surgically clean wound can be used. Suture tracts or sutures can be used to close the wounds in primary union. Suture tracts will be formed in primary union. Healing shows scanty granulation tissue at the incised gap and along the suture tracts, and the outcome is neat linear scar. But here the healing leaves exuberant granulation tissue to fill the gap, and a contracted irregular wound will be there. The complication of primary union is epidermal inclusion cyst formation, whereas secondary union is suppuration. So basic complication of wound healing is infection by bacteria because of delayed wound healing, implantation or epidermal cyst formation due to persistence of epithelial cells in the wound after healing. Pigmentation means rust-like color due to staining of hemosiderin, that is, hemosiderin is released from the clot. So if it is left in the wound, it may give a stained appearance to a healed wound. Deficient scar formation occur due to inadequate formation of granulation tissue. Presence of infection. Bacterial contamination of an open wound delays the process of healing due to release of bacterial toxins. So, surgical removal of dead and necrosed tissue debridement helps in preventing bacterial infection. Sometimes there will be hypertrophied scar and keloid formation, basically from secondary union, where excess of collagen formation in healing may result in keloid, means claw-like formation, seen more commonly in blacks. Incisional hernia can also occur in a weak scar. Excessive contraction leads to formation of contractures or cicatrization. Example, Dupuytren's contracture, plantar contracture, Peyronie's disease. Squamous cell carcinoma can develop in Marjolin's ulcer, that is the scar following burns in the tissues. Factors influencing healing is another important question which can be asked. So there are local factors like infection, which is an important factor acting locally and delays process of healing. Poor blood supply to wound also slows healing. Foreign body, including sutures, interfere with healing and cause intense inflammatory reaction and infection. Movement delays wound healing, and exposure to ionizing radiation also delays wound healing. Exposure to UV light facilitates healing. Type, size and location of injury determines whether healing takes place by resolution or organization. The systemic factors involved is the age, nutrition, systemic infection, administration of glucocorticoids, uncontrolled diabetes, hematological abnormalities like neutrophil functions, neutropenia, bleeding disorders. Healing in specialized tissues is healing of the skin wound provides an example of general process of healing by regeneration and repair. However, in certain specialized tissues, there is either regeneration or repair. Some are described like fracture healing. So, healing of fracture is by callus formation and depends on some clinical consideration whether the fracture is traumatic or complete or incomplete, what type of fracture, whether it is closed or open. So traumatic fracture can happen in a previously normal bone, and pathological fracture can happen in a previously diseased bone. Complete or incomplete green stick fracture can be there, and simple fracture is a closed fracture. Comminuted fracture is splintering of bone, or compound fracture is communicating to skin surface. So primary union of fracture occurs in few special situations where ends are approximated. So similar to wound approximation, here primary union fractures should also have their ends approximated well by application of compressions clamps. So in these cases, the bony union will take place with formation of medullary callus without periosteal callus formation. The patient can be made ambulatory early, but there is more extensive bone necrosis and healing. Secondary union is more common process of fracture. And though it is continuous process, secondary bone union is described under three headings. They will be procallus formation, osseous callus formation, and remodeling. So we'll talk about procallus formation. First, there will be hematoma formation due to bleeding from the torn vessels. So there will be loose meshwork of blood and fibrin clot. Then there will be granulation tissue formation in this clot. The local inflammatory cells like neutrophils will be recruited to the site with exudation of fibrin, polymorphs and macrophages. Macrophages will try to phagocytose and clear this entire fibrin material left out from the clot. Then there will be ingrowth of granulation tissue. So ingrowth of granulation tissue is nothing but the blood vessel starts growing in this hematoma. So there will also be proliferation of mesenchymal cells from periosteum and endosteum. So mesenchymal cells are fibroblast which comes from the periosteum and endosteum. And now the callus formation takes place. So what is callus? So callus is nothing but woven bone. Cartilage starts within few days. The cells of inner layer of periosteum have osteogenic potential. So they can lay down collagen as well as osteoid matrix. So whenever you find a fibrin background and here the woven bone starts forming, that is, what is woven bone first of all? So woven bone is the immature kind of bone where the hard osteoid has not been laid, only the fibrous tissue framework have been laid, and collagen will also be present. Finally, that will be added on by the osteoid matrix and the granulation tissue. So in this entire thing of osteoid matrix, collagen, granulation tissue is called as callus. So when does this callus become procallus? So osteoid undergo calcification. So the osteoid matrix, we read here the osteoid matrix. Okay, osteoid matrix, the collagen and the fibrin. All this should undergo calcification and now it will be called as woven bone. It gives spindle shaped or fusiform appearance to the union. At times callus is composed of woven bone plus cartilage. So this temporarily immobilizes the bony ends. This stage is called as procallus. Procallus is of external, intermediate and internal procallus. So I hope you understood. Callus is composed of woven bone and cartilage, whereas woven bone callus consists of calcified osteoid. Okay, so callus is composed of woven bone and cartilage, which starts within the first few days. The cells of inner layer of the periosteum have osteogenic potential and lay down collagen as well as osteoid matrix. Osteoid matrix undergoes calcification and is called as woven bone callus. At times, callus is composed of woven bone and cartilage, that is called as procallus. So I hope the doubt is cleared. If anything, you can ask me in the comments. Osseous callus formation means the procallus now act as a background or scaffold on which osseous callus is composed. So osseous callus will now be mineralized, and that will be the lumen will form, and there will be medullary cavity along with lamellar bone formation. So in their place, newly formed blood vessels, osteoblast, invading the lying down osteoid, which will be calcified. Lamellar bone is formed by developing abrasion system concentrically around the blood vessel. So all this will lead to osseous callus formation. Finally, remodeling takes place, that is the formation of lamellar bone, where osteoblastic laying, this is osteoblastic laying, and this is the endothelium, these are the osteoblasts. So there will be osteoblastic laying as well as osteoclastic removal, which will decide the remodeling of united bones. External callus will be cleared away and compact bone is formed in place of intermediate callus, and bone marrow cavity develops in internal callus. Complication of fracture healing is fibrous union, that is, instead of osseous union, if the mobilization is of fibrous union, it is not done. Occasionally, a false joint may develop at the fracture site, that is called as pseudoarthrosis. Non-union is if some soft tissue intervenes between both the ends, then that will lead to non-union. Delayed is because of some infection or because of blood supply, poor nutrition, movements and old age, they might be delayed union. That finishes our fracture healing. Healing of nervous system includes the nerve cells of the brain, spinal cord, ganglia, which once destroyed cannot be replaced. So these are permanent cells. Axons of CNS also do not show any significant regeneration, and the damaged neuroglial cells, however, may show proliferation of astrocytes called gliosis. Peripheral nervous system is in contrast to the cells of CNS. The peripheral nerves show regeneration, mainly proliferation of Schwann cells and fibrils from the distal end. Myelin sheath and axon of the intact distal nerve undergo Wallerian degeneration up to the next rod of Ranvier towards proximal end. Regeneration in the form of sprouting of blood vessels takes place from the viable end of axon. These fibrils go along the track of degenerated nerve, so that in about 6 to 7 weeks, the peripheral stump consists of tube-filled elongated Schwann cells. One of the fibrils from the proximal stump enters the old neural tube and develops into new functional axon. Healing of muscle. The healing of striated muscle is similar to peripheral nerves. On injury, cut ends of the muscle fiber retract but are held together by stromal connective tissue. Injured site is filled with fibrinous material, polymorphs and macrophages. If the muscle sheet is intact, about 3 months time restores and restores properly oriented muscle fibers, example Zenker's degeneration in typhoid fever. If the muscle sheath is damaged, it forms a disorganized multinucleate mass and scar composed of fibrovascular tissue. Smooth muscle regeneration, that is non-striated muscle, has limited regenerative capacity and large destructive lesions cannot be replaced. Whereas cardiac muscle, destruction of heart muscle is replaced by fibrous tissue. However, in situations where endomysium, that is the inner lining of the heart, is intact, regeneration of the cardiac fibers might take place in very young patient. Coming to the healing of mucosal surfaces, cells of mucosal surface have very good regeneration and are normally being lost and replaced continuously, like the mucosa of alimentary tract, respiratory tract, urinary tract and endometrium. This occurs with proliferation from margins, migration, multilayering, differentiation of epidermis, epithelial cells in the same way as in the epidermal cells. Healing of solid epithelial organs is following Ross tissue damage, and it will be always fibrous scar formation. Parenchymal cell damage with intact basement membrane or intact supporting stromal tissue regeneration may occur. Example, tubular necrosis of kidney with intact basement membrane. So proliferation and slow migration of the tubular epithelial may occur to form renal tubules. In viral hepatitis, if part of the liver lobule is damaged with intact stromal network, proliferation of hepatocytes may result in restoration of the liver lobule. So we have completed healing of the wound, healing of fractures, healing of solid organs and healing of other muscle tissue and mucosal surfaces. These are my references. Thank you for listening.